I think I'm a better doctor because I understand reading people. So much of music and acting is understanding what the other person is seeing and what the other person is experiencing. And as a doctor, if I'm only seeing and experiencing what happens from the white coat forward, I'm missing one of the most important aspects of being a doctor. And that's empathy, that's sympathy, that's being in that moment with that other human being, understanding the depth of pain that they're in and showing them that you're there with them. Mm-hmm. Even if you can't help them, being there with them is a form of consolation and treatment in and of itself. I heard Dr. Kent Bradley talk, who, if you remember, was the U.S. doctor that was in Africa and got Ebola.
Oh, wow.
And he said that one of the most important things that he did in Africa, treating Ebola, was suiting up in a hazmat suit around one of the most dangerous pathogens out there and holding a human being's hand while they died.
Wow.
That's the most important thing he could do with his time after his 11 plus years of training. The most important thing he could do is sit there, hold their hand, and talk to them. And knowing that being a doctor is so much more than sitting behind a computer and tapping. I think that taking a fresh perspective from different fields and being able to apply them to the new field that you're diving in is a huge advantage.
JMack Daddy Slaughter. How would somebody come up with that name in the first place? Well, I'll tell you how. His mom and his dad knew in advance that he was going to be a successful musician, singer, actor, and emergency physician. Yes, this is one diverse cat. You're going to love him. I've known him for years, yet gapped this entire period of his life where he accomplished all these wonderful things. And I'm anxious for you to hear the trajectory of his career, what inspired him to change certain things, and what he's doing to change the world now as a TikTok guy. Let's see how this works out on the T-Cast. JMack Slaughter. All right, cool. It's amazing to have you here in this context because we just barely started getting refamiliarizing ourselves with one another's families and everything else. So this will be interesting for me too, because I know a lot of the typical questions you get, I'll try to work around those and really kind of dig a little deeper.
Cool.
Because I knew you as a person, and I don't know you as well as a person now than I did when you were a person.
You knew me when I was like 6 years old, dude.
Was it that?
Yeah, I was that young. Yeah, no. 7 maybe. I was so young. I mean, I think I was first grade.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So when you read a bio, obviously it interests me to know that someone's an American actor, a singer, and an emergency physician.
Yeah.
And then you get the Sesame Street recollection of guess which one doesn't belong, right?
Yeah.
Because you have this creative
one of these
stuff.
Things is not like the other.
And I knew your family as a creative family. Everyone's a musician, and I can completely see where creative crossovers happen, where you have actors and musicians and dancers and different things that are natural crossovers. Now, you were a musician, but weren't, at the time I knew you as a kid, were not a multi-instrumentalist. So you started out on drums, were fantastic.
You taught me.
Oh, well.
You taught me with your long, flowing blonde hair.
Yes.
And your sweat shorts that rode up a little too high sometimes. I'd be like, what's happening over there?
No longer a secret. Thank you. Thank you. And I knew your sister played, and both of your parents have played.
Yeah.
So, and then tell me about what happened when because you were doing some acting then too.
Right.
You were doing Casa Mañana weekend shows and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So tell me how you ended up going from teenager JMack into, I'm going to do a career as a creative, how did that exactly happen?
Well, I mean, I always just found myself in entertainment and on the stage because I was the youngest of 3 kids that were very active in the local performing community. My oldest sister, Sarah, was Little Orphan Annie for the Casa Manana summer musicals, which was a huge deal back in the day. And this was in, the 80s, and she was like 9 or something like that. So she was absurdly young to be given this very important integral role in this show that, I mean, Casa Manana at the time, I think they sat 1,300 people, and they would do a show every single night for like 2.5 weeks or something like that. So that was a really big deal for her age. And so that really launched us into the world of performing. And so when I was 3 years old, my mom pulled me up on stage and wanted me to sing, but I didn't have a little boys choir voice. I had kind of more of a raspy voice, like I still kind of have at this point. And so I sang like Elvis and like Jerry Lee Lewis and stuff like that. And
you rocked out.
I rocked out, man. I rocked out, and I really enjoyed my time on stage, but never had to really actively pursue it because I was just doing what the rest of the family did, And then I kept doing shows at Casa Manana, got into a boy band when I was 15 years old. Kid Craddock, who's nationally syndicated, put together a boy band on his radio show in like 99 or something like that. And the audience ended up voting on who was going to be in the band, and they voted me in as the baby.
Yes.
And they didn't know that I actually was too young to be in the band, but I lied about my age.
Did you really?
I did. I said I was 16 and I was really 15, but instead of just like taking it a year back for my birth date, I made up a whole new birth date. And so I'd like get caught in lies sometimes and be like,
That's awesome.
It was completely ridiculous. But our first show, because we were on such a big platform and we, were birthed on that platform, 4,000 people came to our very first show.
Where was that? In locally or?
Yeah, that was locally. That was at Grapevine Mills Mall.
Yeah.
It was like when it was first opening. So 4,000 people are showing up and we're singing and like dancing around. And I mean, I was a performer since I was little, but like I always wanted to play instruments on stage.
Have you danced before though?
I mean, a little bit during the acting stuff. I do it like for the musicals I was in and stuff. And I was with like, a touring group called Casa Kids that, we would sing and dance and stuff. But that wasn't my passion. My passion was playing instruments and I was, writing music on my own and stuff since I was 13. So being 15 on stage in a boy band was kind of bittersweet.
And at that point, if I may interject.
Yeah.
So as a drummer, I know you had some natural talent. You obviously had some direction. This is a similar story, maybe atone to something where you have athletic big brothers or something.
Yes.
The girl grows up and she, becomes this great athlete. How much of that became a passion of yours, or at what point did it actually become a passion? Or did
instead of just like what everybody else was doing?
Yeah.
Honestly, it was so my mom told me that I was going to learn drums, and that's when I started with you. And I loved it. I had a lot of fun doing it, but I did it because she told me I was going to do it.
Right.
And then after that, I learned saxophone, and I loved it, but I also did it because she told me I was going to do it. But the first time an instrument was mine was guitar. Okay. And dude, the first time I picked up a guitar and I played it was my friend, actually. His name is Jay Brooks. Shout out to Jay Brooks. He put a guitar in my lap. I was nervous about the guitar because my dad played guitar my whole life. And I was like, that's his instrument, Like I think I understand it, but I don't know what to do with my fingers yet. And he was the first person to just put it in my lap and be like, you're learning guitar today. And ever since then, it was just this love affair, man. And it's been there, I think I was 12 or 13 when a guitar first got put in my lap, and I've been playing it ever since then. It's been my primary instrument since then. But that's the moment that it became mine,
Yep.
And ever since then, I've loved it, and I've loved being able to share that with other people, ride on that, and now teach my kids as well.
And you had an opportunity, so to jump forward again.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've sang most of your life as well as kind of part of the curriculum, so to speak.
Right.
Being a musician, actor, or whatever. So tell me about, Craddock has a lot of charitable
Foundation reaches out to a lot of people and made a really big impact while he was here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how much of that were you aware of? How much of that band itself was a part of his greater library of impact?
So we actually, back when I was in the boy band, he would take us around to the Children's Hospital and we would sing for the kids there, and work with the kids on a one-on-one basis if they were interested in like kind of messing around singing or learning how to like beatbox or something like that.
Yeah.
And that was my first introduction really to the world of nonprofits. And he didn't involve us too much more after that, but it's interesting to skip forward like 20 years after I became a doctor. He had passed away. I had been in close communication with his daughter, Caroline Craddock. Shout out to Caroline, wonderful human being, ended up inheriting the nonprofit and that heavy responsibility of how do I keep this thing going without the person that started it all, right. And she was like, JMack, I need your help. And I was a doctor at that point, which Kid Craddock never foresaw happening and didn't get to see happen.
Did?
I didn't either, honestly.
I didn't either. I mean, you just kind of skipped that part, by the way. But go ahead.
But so everything came full circle when she was like, I need you to help me with this. And now I'm on the board of Kids. And every single year in a month or so, we're about to take kids with terminal illnesses and chronic illnesses and their whole family, and we take them to Disney World. And these are people who have not been able to really leave their city because of, the burdens of having chronic illness, all of the medical reasons behind that, but also the financial burden of that. I mean, think about how much they've had to pay day in and day out for medical procedures and for their daily medicines, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of these kids have never been on a plane before. And we get to take them to Disney World every year. And it's just a beautiful thing.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. R.I.P. Kid Craddock, man.
So was that part of your inspiration for, and I'm getting already way ahead of myself.
Keep skipping it.
You just put it to the floor and the rear end is swinging all all over the place, right?
I'm ADHD anyway, so we can just go on tangents all day long.
Hopefully
and I love
the audience can follow like I am. So you became a doctor.
Yeah.
You've worked with kids, but you have your own charitable foundation.
Kid inspired me.
So that's what I was getting to.
Yeah.
So how did that come about? What was there an antithesis or a particular instance or occurrence that happened where it just something clicked?
Yeah. So, I mean, being around nonprofits at a young age showed me that you can do nonprofits. It's something where you could touch and feel. It was tangible. It wasn't just like, oh, that's something that people far, far away do. It's something that you can achieve if you believe in it, and you get people who are also passionate about that cause together. You can figure it out as you go along. Mm-hmm. And there was a moment. And I end up telling this a decent amount, but everything clicked for me. And it's when my mom was getting treated for breast cancer. I was 21, and I, at that point, had left, music and TV and film, and had decided to become a doctor. And I'm 2 years in, and I'm so self-absorbed. This is what I'm going to do with my life. It's all about me. And then my mom gets this potentially fatal diagnosis, right? And it's, it just takes me outside of my ego for a minute. And I watch, excruciating hours of chemotherapy. And there was this one particular drug, by the way, cut forward to, I don't know how many years we're out now, but she's been in remission for over 15 years now. So there's a happy ending. There's a happy ending to this. I need to tell people that up front. But but at the time things were uncertain. And this one drug has the known side effect of turning your fingernails and your toenails black and potentially making them fall off. And this is after my mother had both of her breasts removed and lost all of her hair. And so much of her womanhood was taken from her in the past months. And she was like, I'll be damned if I'm going to lose my fingernails too. And so the way to potentially avoid that is to put your fingers and toes in ice, because ice vasoconstricts. So it kind of brings those blood vessels more tightly closed. So the toxic chemicals that are being put into your bloodstream, less of them gets there.
Okay.
And, you know, you remember being a kid and putting ice on your head when you bumped your head. Give it 2 minutes and you're like, oh, this is horrendous.
Right.
But my mom has my willpower. And she needed that last piece of womanhood there. So she kept her fingers and toes in ice for an entire hour. As a, 21, 22-year-old kid, it's so tough to see your mom suffer like that. And so the second time she had that treatment, my sisters and I brought instruments and we started singing and we were jamming and my mom was making requests. And that hour was just like over. That hour just flew by. And it went from being this like dark, sad, draining place to this like happy, loving, nourishing space. And like, man, you experience power like that and you're like, I have to do something with this.
Yeah.
I can't ignore this, And we went week after week and the other patients, because music therapy really wasn't a thing back then. There was like a person with an instrument sometimes that would come into the hospitals, but it wasn't a well-established thing like it's starting to become now. And patients would wheel past in their wheelchairs and be like, can you come see me in room 234 next? And so we go over there and we jam out for them too.
Really cool.
Yeah. And so you feel the power of something like that and you have to do something with it. And so the nonprofit Music Meets Medicine was born soon after that. And here we are, man. A decade and a half later, we're donating instruments to children, teenagers at children's hospitals. Mm-hmm. We support music therapy, spread awareness, and financially donate to hospitals so they can create or expand their music therapy programs. We even raised $150,000 a few years back with the help of the Kid Craddock Morning Show.
There you go.
Thank you, Kid Craddock Morning Show.
Once again.
And we created a jam space where patients can come down and experience what we call embarrassment-free musical exploration, where they can put on headphones and jam. Nobody has to hear it if they don't know what they're doing. And it's just a beautiful, fulfilling part of my life.
That's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
and so you kind of answered a lot of my other questions too, in that turning point was also a point at which you grew up fast.
Yeah.
Because you've got all these older people giving you a direction that is so definitive and it's something that your passions align with. And then you started seeing outside of yourself at such a young age. Most people are so myopic on their end, which is natural. I mean, it's natural. You're 21 years old. You're trying to figure out what you want to do. You're going to try this. You're going to quit. You're going to move to something else because you like this. You're going to
call your parents every now and then. Yeah, I call them every month, every week, something like that.
But even if you're close to them, you're still focused on what you're going to do and what you're going to be and what your vocation is and everything else until you get to a certain age where you finally, the epiphany is that the real key is to see outside of yourself. It's not all about you, right? And you had the advantage of seeing that so early. I think that's fantastic.
Well, I'm very lucky that I experienced adversity at a young age, because when you experience adversity in person, you experience suffering, you have a choice. Are you going to take those emotions and are you going to let that, just drag you down and take you into a state of depression, which is a very natural place, and that's okay when people go there. But there's a defense mechanism that I learned about later on in med school called sublimation. It's a mature defense mechanism. And you take painful experiences and painful memories and you turn that into something beautiful and productive and something that can benefit society. And you, through the work that you did for our community, being undercover and all the terribly dangerous situations you put yourself in and all of human suffering that you put yourself in, you did something similar, man. Like you chose to take that and to spin it into something positive. And it's just one of the most beautiful ways to take experience and to handle that. I think that exists. I love the concept of sublimation.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it too. I appreciate the EDU.
Yeah.
So if we then back out of the deepness here, as you were performing, so you did the Craddock band thing for a while.
Yeah.
I understand you got to play for giant crowds.
Yeah. Our biggest one, man. It was New Year's, Y2K, baby. And they weren't all there to see us. That's for dang sure. Probably not that many were, but there were 75,000 people there.
Good
so
Lord.
We got to perform in front of 75,000 people, just like all the way down Main Street in Dallas. It was nuts. You couldn't see all of the people. It just kind of like they disappeared on the horizon at one point, and you were like, I think I made it. I think I've made it.
And there's something interesting that I think I can relate to also when you talk about, because that's always, you know me, was a musician by profession and everything else. It's every musician's dream, right? To be able to do that. And there's also a recollection where you kind of refine what really inspires you. And I think I recall you saying something about it being a fantastic experience, but missing the aspect of you having anything to do with the creative process.
Yeah, it was bittersweet. It was bittersweet. I would be on stage in front of 75,000 people. We toured with Destiny's Child. We opened up for Bon Jovi. And so we like did these really big shows, but it was bittersweet because I was like, this is exactly what I want to be doing, but with my music.
Right.
Of
course.
And so that was rough. That was rough and it was only a matter of time until that weighed down on me enough. And I ended up.
It's not rough. It was just a side note.
Hashtag first world problems, right?
Hashtag spoiled brat.
Spoiled brat problems. You're so right, dude. You're so right.
Yeah, but
there was a need there. There was a deep, creative need that wasn't being fulfilled. And I wanted to express that to the world.
And so is that why did you end up splitting from the group on your own? Was that the motivation that you really kind of wanted to go be 100%. Your own creative self, right?
100%. Yeah, we had gone to LA, where we toured throughout the South with Destiny's Child, and we got flown to meet with Arista in New York and out in LA with some labels and stuff. And ultimately, everybody knew that particular wave of boy bands was coming to an end. And I just didn't want to waste it. We were about to sign more contracts for years, and I was just like, let's just quit while we're ahead. This was awesome. This was a really great experience. But I had some people offering me opportunities to record some of the stuff that I'd been writing on my own, based on guitar and everything, kind of singer-songwriter stuff, and I went that way.
Okay, well, that was the other question. So singer-songwriter's sort of the style that you hear your own voice in.
Yeah, but it had interesting manifestations throughout the years, and actually joined up with some dudes that were more into like the indie, almost like emo pop punk scene down in San Diego when I was living in LA. And so we made like a really interesting fusion between indie music and more like singer-songwriter-y stuff. And I really enjoyed that band. That was called Calendar back in the day. Shout out to the Calendar boys.
Yeah, that's just, if you have a wide variety of music that you can appreciate and have different people in the group, that always makes the best music.
It does.
I mean, how are you going to innovate if everybody likes the exact same stuff, right?
Right. Yeah, it also makes it difficult too, because then you have people that are trying to push things in different creative avenues, but that's ultimately like what strengthens the overall project. Yeah. So even though you might be butting heads a little bit, ultimately it's going to benefit the project significantly.
So you played there, you did, and then you jumped into some acting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I know you've talked in other places about how you transitioned to acting. There was one particular thing, maybe you can tell me about your transition, and then more specifically about the show that you were on, if there was any kind of interesting impact. I know it was a short-lived series,
right,
but it had a premise that is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And I wonder if even, you know how much an impact can be. You take 100 people and truly impact them. I mean,
right.
You could die and be proud.
Yeah,
right?
You're so right.
And we're talking about a lot more than 100 people, by the way.
Yeah.
But I wonder what kind of impact, or if you've heard anything about just the premise and the way that show was set.
Yeah.
If it had any kind of impact on anyone else's perspective or anything. So maybe just talk about how you kind of got there, and then if that even happened.
So basically I'm in LA and I'm playing shows out, and an agent came to one of my showcases, my musical showcases, and she was like, you should be an actor. And in the back of my mind, I was like, this is going to help my music. Okay. And so they ended up sending me out on auditions. And this was with United Talent Agency, which at the time was like one of the biggest talent agencies in the world. I'm not sure where the heck they rank right now, but they were very impressive back in the day. So that was a really big deal that they decided to take me on, and they sent me out on a ton of auditions. And actually right around that time, I ended up getting a development deal to develop a TV show around my life. And I even was able to pull my two older sisters in on the deal. So we got paid 6 figures to develop this TV show. And the TV show didn't end up going through, but it was a way to be like, hello, Los Angeles, I'm here, you know?
Yes.
And then that momentum kind of led me into other things. And I guest starred on a couple of TV shows. Amanda Bynes had a show called What I Like About You. I even got to work with Tim Curry from Rocky Horror Picture Show, which was sweet. It was on some lame WB show, but I got to work with him. Right. And then...
That's one more WB show than I've been on.
Yeah. By the way, hilarious story because, you obviously lift. I lifted super hard before I recorded on that show because I wanted to look like I had some guns, you know what I mean?
You got freaking guns?
Yeah, I don't have guns like that.
No,
I don't have Broadwater guns, but I got a little something going on. But so I'm working out super hard the day before and I wake up and my arms are like this. And I was like, what the hell? It's never happened to me before. My arms wouldn't straighten out. I mean, I could, but I had to forcefully push them down. It took me honestly 45 seconds to get it all the way down. It hurt so much. And now I recognize that I was in rhabdomyolysis, which is actually a potentially very serious medical condition.
Is it a form of atrophy or something?
Yeah, it's basically when your muscles, you work out too dang hard, your muscles aren't used to it, and your muscle tissue starts rapidly breaking down and you release all your muscle proteins into your bloodstream. It can flood your kidneys. You can have kidney failure. People end up getting hospitalized for this. And I had no idea that was going on. All I knew is that my arms were locked like this. And I was about to record with this movie TV legend, Tim Curry, and I'm supposed to look natural. And my arms are like this. And I'm like, how am I going to pull this up? And so
Somebody put a book in my hand.
Yeah. Fortunately, I was a musician on the show. I was playing a musician and I had a guitar. So the guitar case I was holding, and I had a piece of luggage in this hand, and they didn't even know that I actually needed those to look natural. And so I put them, and they weighted my arms down until they looked natural. And so my arms were kind of straight the whole scene.
That's hilarious.
With Tim Curry. So random and funny. But so I did that show. I did a TV show that I think you're referring to that was on for a year. Which in the way of TV shows, that's actually totally amazing.
Yeah, that's great.
That, before I was in TV and film and I'd hear a show only got one season, I'm like, ha, chumps, they only got one season. But actually, there are so many hundreds of TV shows that never even get that first episode filmed that just die in production. But not only did we get our pilot episode filmed, we got picked up, we got a full 22 episodes. Which, we were all really proud of. And we were actually seen by millions of people nationwide every week. We were doing really great, but then ended up politically dying because this other show in the WB was across from Survivor and Friends, which were the biggest shows. And who's going to watch a WB show when you got Survivor and Friends on? And the producer for that show that was in that dying slot was like, forget this new show. Take care of me because I have all the big shows on this network, And so they put us into the death slot. We died. But kind of what you were referring to is the fact that at the time we were forward thinking. It was a TV show about a white kid and his mom moving in with the mom's best friend's family who happened to be black. And so there was a lot of interplay between, cultural differences and differences that don't exist at all, but society at the time kind of told us existed. And so I would like to think that a certain percentage of the people who watched our show on a weekly basis, and the cool thing is that although, our ancestry may have been in your face, visually, we didn't really talk about that a lot. That wasn't the main focus. The main focus was about family and support. But
there's a beautiful thing about that. It was simple. Right?
Yeah, it was simple.
Wasn't supposed to be a deep dive, but just the presentation might offer up a valid conversation.
Right. And in the early 2000s, that was pushing the envelope a little bit. And so, yeah, I'd like to think that a certain percentage of the people watching had that normalized for them that much more, just a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then, a couple of years later, shows like Modern Family came out. It was just like a hodgepodge of all different ethnicities and, sexual orientations and everything. And then now it wouldn't be weird at all to do a show like that.
Right.
But at the time it kind of stood out. And so, yeah, I'd hope that it would have a positive effect.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So obviously you'd skipped way ahead of this back in our first 2 minutes. I think you talked about, hey, after I left LA, I became this doctor. And by the way, so one of my questions has a lot to do with, and I'm older than you, and I often get people inquiring to me about the same thing because I feel like my career has taken on giant segments that are completely different. And a lot of people might say, which obviously I do not, but a lot of people might say with some validity that if you really want to be great at something, then you really have to dive and spend your life. We're always learning, which we all concede that. So if you had decided any earlier to do what you're doing, then it could have been that much better. Or if you had just stuck to acting, how much better could you be? What do you have to say about just looking back on the experience and the diversity of experiences that you have, and what impact has that had on your life now in terms of just you as a person?
Yeah.
And what made you, because it wasn't your mom's illness, right? So, and also what made you actually decide to take to do the 180 into medicine from the creative industry?
Yeah. So you touched on something interesting there, and remind me again, you were asking a question right before you talked about what made me spin off into just the world of medicine.
What part has having a diverse career
you were talking about going deep into one thing versus experiencing a lot of things. Yeah, it's really interesting because it all depends on what you want in life. Like, do you want to be the Michael Phelps of swimming? Or are you like, okay with being the Ryan Lochte, kicking some ass, and then moving on to something else, experiencing something else and making a positive impact in some other form, of either, creative, athletic, or, a career perspective. And for me, although I've done a decent amount of projects that are like, somewhat high profile and stuff.
Oh, notable.
Thanks, bro. Thank you.
That's the point of the question, for sure.
So much of it really is about my experience and like what I want to get out of it, and it's selfish in a way that I want to dive deep into things, and I want to go where my excitement and my passion leads me. I don't want to do things that bore me. I don't want to do things that feel like I'm doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over. To what end? Why? If I'm doing that because I'm potentially going to cure cancer one day, well, hell yeah. I want people to do that. If I'm going to do that because I want to reach some sort of egotistical milestone and say that I was the #1 actor in the world or something like that, I'm not as excited about that.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that by diving deep, and I have done very, very deep dives into many different arenas in life, it seems like it would be a superficial dive to only work for 4 years in TV and film, but for 4 years, I hyper focus. My ADHD, I'm all over the place, but when I'm passionate and excited about something, I'm spending so much more dedicated time than somebody who now we would term as like neurotypical would approach something. Because when I'm passionate about something, I just don't stop. But when you do these deep dives in all these multiple different fields, when you dive into a new field, you have this perspective on that field that other people don't have. I'm not your normal doctor. And because that, I think I'm a better doctor. I think I'm a better doctor because I understand reading people. So much of music and acting is understanding what the other person is seeing and what the other person is experiencing. And as a doctor, if I'm only seeing and experiencing what happens from the white coat forward, I'm missing one of the most important aspects of being a doctor. And that's empathy, that's sympathy, that's being in that moment with that other human being, understanding the depth of pain that they're in and showing them that you're there with them. Mm-hmm. Even if you can't help them, being there with them is a form of consolation and treatment in and of itself. I heard Dr. Kent Bradley talk, who, if you remember, was the U.S. doctor that was in Africa and got Ebola.
Oh, wow.
And he said that one of the most important things that he did in Africa, treating Ebola, was suiting up in a hazmat suit around one of the most dangerous pathogens out there and holding a human being's hand while they died.
Wow.
That's the most important thing he could do with his time. After his 11 plus years of training, the most important thing he could do is sit there, hold their hand, and talk to them.
Yeah.
And knowing that being a doctor is so much more than sitting behind a computer and tapping. I think that taking a fresh perspective from different fields and being able to apply them to the new field that you're diving in is a huge advantage. And are there doctors out there that are going to climb some sort of like rank list that exists and best emergency doctors or best cancer doctors or something like that, and always be notches ahead of me because they knew they were going to be a doctor since they were 5? Hell yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I'm so happy with my path so far. And I love the diversity that my past experiences have brought to my current experiences.
I am too, man. I'm super proud of you and impressed.
Thanks, bro.
I say proud of you, but I don't mean that in a condescending way. But I've known you for a long time. So
you were a grown ass man when I was a baby. So you can say you're proud of me all day long, and that'll make me feel great.
Yeah, I don't know if I was a grown ass man, but
you were a grown ass man, Tegan. Your hair was at your butt cheeks. That means you're a grown ass man.
I was alive long enough to grow that out.
Exactly.
But I think that's about it. I think if I still acted the way I did, that was about the same age you were when your mom got sick. That's about how old I was.
Oh, that's crazy to think of.
Teaching all that.
Yeah.
So perspective wise, that's no grown ass man actually, right? I'm still trying to figure it out too. But I do appreciate that about you, and I don't personally think there's anything wrong with being the best at something either, but I can relate to, and my father was the same way, and my father's father was the same way. Is they get into something, become completely, there is no plan B. If I die trying, this is what I'm going to do. I see nothing else. This is all I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then getting that sense that you're done with it and seeking out something else.
Yeah.
And I had the same sentiment when I left the music industry for police work, and everybody was like the same thing. Like, what? Wait a minute. What are you doing?
But how often did your creativity come into play when you were undercover?
Oh my gosh. Oh, I can't. Yeah. I mean, I have the same parallels,
right,
without such an incredible amount of stories that you have. But it is absolutely a fantastic way to go. It is. So the
what
world
you did was way more amazing than what I did.
The world needs the JMack Slaughters, man.
And the Tee Cad Broadwaters.
I'm super proud to have you, man. And man, I think that kind of sums up really what I wanted to get out of you. It's just to paint the picture of what you've become and how successful you are is just contingent on how much you can give of yourself. How good can you make yourself in order to give that to other people? And I see that in you, and I really appreciate that.
Hey, thank you, man. Thank you. And it's really cool how everything has now come full circle. Again, things keep coming full circle in my life, with the boy band to working with the nonprofit Kids, and you know, from acting to medicine, and then now back to acting with the videos that I'm doing online and stuff like that. It's just, it's so cool. It's so cool that I was able to have enough transitions early on in my life, I think, to where I'm comfortable with those transitions. I'm comfortable saying, okay, now it's time to not just be a doctor. Like, now let's be a doctor or actor kind of thing, you know?
And, yes, and be ornery. It really is impressive. So that was my final question is about the things that you're doing now and the direction that you want to take them. Where do you want to end up, you know, down the road? Or can you see even that far, because you're so into what you're doing and so many new things, but you have a massive social media following, which for someone like you, honestly, is no surprise, even though the accomplishment is insane. But you do a fantastic job. You are leveraging all of the things that you've accumulated through your life. I can completely see that.
Yeah, it all makes sense now. It's funny because along the way, I really did, you know, watch and study people on social media And I was very interested in it. And ultimately, I'm glad that that didn't exist when I was in LA, because I would have never left to become a doctor. But I would have stayed in LA and I would have become like a gaming streamer or something, or tried to figure out how to just work on social media all the time. But I'm glad that didn't exist, because along the way in medicine, I'm just kind of like watching and researching and like seeing, you know, what's happening in this world. And one of the things that always stuck out to me was like the people that have the best content are the people that are just being their authentic self.
Yeah.
And are sharing experiences that they have naturally on a day-to-day basis. And I was like, man, I wish I had something like that. It's too bad I don't have something like that. And then one day I was like, wait a minute, I do have something like that to share. What I'm seeing and experiencing in the emergency departments every single day is crazy. It's exciting and it's heartbreaking and it's educational. And you know, there's just these moments of like pure joy and deep sadness. And you experience the spectrum of human emotion during almost every shift, if you're open to it. A lot of people in medicine are numb to it. A lot of people are walled off because they've experienced too much of that sadness and death and terrible, terrible diagnoses that they've given people. But fortunately, after residency, now I was super burnt out in residency and I felt very few emotions. Openly, I can talk about that now. But I ended up, you know, working my way out of that through many things, you know, working on, you know, myself and diet and exercise and trying to sleep right, despite the demands of the schedule of being a doctor, and being okay, being okay with those negative emotions, accepting those and talking through those and stuff. I've gotten it back. I have my emotions back. And so I do feel those on a regular basis in the emergency department. Just yesterday, I had a patient who, without divulging too much information, she was very young. She had 4 terrible, earth-shattering miscarriages already. And I can't say how old she was, but she was shockingly young to have already had 4 painful miscarriages. And I told her she was pregnant, and she got so excited, but then she got so sad, you know? And she was like, is the baby okay? And I was like, I don't know yet. That's what we're about to find out. Right. And so we're both on pins and needles as I'm taking care of other people who are having heart attacks and like shoulder dislocations and stuff. And I'm like, man, I hope that baby's okay. And it turned out the hormone levels were totally normal, and baby looked nice and healthy, and baby had a normal heart rate. And I had to go in there and be like, we have to be cautious because this is happening so many times.
Temper the enthusiasm.
We don't know. We don't know where this is going. But right now, in this moment, you have a happy, healthy baby in there with a strong heartbeat.
Wow.
And we both just had this moment of victory, you know?
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. And I got to fully experience that. And I don't know if I had that same situation in residency, whether I would have been able to actually experience that and be in that moment, because you just get numb at some point. And that's one of the reasons why doctors and nurses end up leaving medicine. And one of the reasons why the suicide rate in doctors is almost double that of the general population.
So how did you finally end up figuring out how to shelve some of the emotion and ingest other parts of the emotion? Because part of that job as a doctor was the experience as a police officer. You have a lot of the same kind of, suicidal, depressive, crazy stories from people that just haven't figured out how to handle it. And I remember, experiences driving by somebody in an accident, where you see the blood and the struggles and whatever, and you're not on duty, and it was making me sick.
Yeah.
But if you're on duty and you're showing up to some tragic scene, you're automatically thinking, you need to go over here, move this over here, and I need you to call this or whatever. Right. But those are completely opposing emotional states.
They are.
And like you said, you can't be so business that you lack the ability to empathize.
Right.
So how have you managed to juggle that without going insane?
It's difficult because like you said, when there is a moment, when there is a true emergency that comes into the ER, if somebody is dead and it's my job of bringing them back, or they are actively dying in front of me, I can't be emotionally present with that patient in that moment. So it has to be able to turn on and off. And man, the answer is, I don't really know. I think I think through the years of doing it, I mean, I've almost been an ER doc for 10 years. It's crazy because I still feel young at heart. But
You're young.
but I've been doing it 10 years, including residency. And I think the most important moves that I made to be more emotionally present during my shifts and after my shifts, because if you're an emotional wall in the hospital at all times, there is 100% chance that that's going to spill over into your personal life too. And then you're going to be less invested emotionally as a father and less emotionally invested as a husband or wife or partner, or son or brother. So, you know what I mean? And so to be able to break down that wall appropriately is I feel like, honestly, a gift. Not that I have, but it's a gift that I have been given over the years. That ability to me I feel so fortunate to have that. But to get that first, I had to clean myself up a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was eating terribly in residency. It's just like whatever's around, calories. You know what I mean? Survival mode. You're in survival mode.
Right.
You're in survival mode with your sleep anywhere, anytime. You're in survival mode just with your physical condition. I was in horrendous shape, started working out again, exercising again. Part of that is like being a dad and like just being present with my kids. If my kids want to go on scooters and scoot around, I'm going to get on a scooter. I'm going to scoot around with them. You know what I mean? And then that's cardio. I don't count it in my brain as cardio, but that's cardio.
For sure.
My son wants to play basketball. That's cardio. I knowingly lift multiple times a week. And again, I knowingly like cleaned up my eating. And I very purposefully started talking about the horrors that I experienced on a regular basis in my past and in my present in the emergency departments. And man, that just unlocked it for me. And when I was a young doctor, I would see older doctors that were like numb. And I looked up to that and I was like, I'm going to be like that one day, because I thought it was cool. And man, that's not cool. It's good for your patients in very specific scenarios. In very specific scenarios, you want to be completely unaware emotionally of what's going on.
You want them to believe you're going to take care of business because.
So you need to be able to master that ability. But outside of those extremely serious, life-threatening moments, it is a huge detriment to your life to be numb and cut off to the rest of the world. And so, yeah, I feel very fortunate that I've been able to achieve that ability over the years.
And maybe just the simple acknowledgement of saying that you feel like you've been given an opportunity to balance those things makes you face that balance a little bit naturally. I would dare say this is why it's not for everybody either.
Right.
You can be smart enough to become a doctor, but that doesn't mean you should be a doctor.
Right. It's true.
Right. So that's why I'm grateful you're a doctor.
Hey, oh, come on, dude. You could do it. You could do it, bro. I'm grateful you're a policeman. There's no way I could ever do that.
Well, that's long in my past too. That's way past that also, because that was my, I'm digging in, and then all of a sudden, now I'm over here.
Are you ADHD?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But I do
Just
have
curious.
that part of, I'm too introverted to be that. But
Yeah.
I do possess that part of the personality. Like I said,
the
where
hyper-focus.
you get into something and you just, you
Boom,
can't
that's
think
all
about
there
anything
is.
else.
That's all there is,
And then
yeah.
you somehow grow tired of it. It's not like you dislike it. You just, another interest sparks. And when that happens, you can't divide them as well.
Right.
You really just have to say, oh, now I want to do that. And you just take that right turn wherever that is, right? So, no, I'm not ADHD. I mean, like I said, I could ask you one or two questions pre-recorded. We'd still knock out an hour and a half. You don't even, I'm just a hologram here. And you're like knocking it out. Boys knocking out the answers, man. Be no problem at all. So I'll get back to the last question, because I know we crunked through this, but what's in store? Is it ways that you want people to be able to reach you or your foundation, or what do you have plans in the future? Tell them where they can find you on socials, whatever. Talk about that.
Follow me at dr.jmack on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube. Go to musicmeetsmedicine.org and check that out. We have multiple other programs that we're developing under Music Meets Medicine as well. There's just a lot of exciting fulfilling projects that I'm involved with right now. And I feel so fortunate to be given the opportunities to be doing them. So follow along, more fun stuff to come.
Yes. Love you, brother.
Love you, man.
Thanks for coming.
Dude, thanks for having me.
Keep on keeping on the golden age caffeine. It's some sidewind you're on. Another situation. See the road from the stripes with the lights coming on. Freedom came upon a catastrophic dream. Another dark page to turn. Another situation. They can't have your heart to find. To pursue once has just another time. And every wish ain't hope till the soul is mine. Keep your muse on hoop till your angel cries. A sunlit path you're on, obscure majestic trees. Can't see which way to turn. Just take a new direction. See the road from the side. Your old strides wherever long. Free to think about the way it's supposed to be. It's another dark page to turn. It's another situation.